Hi, I'm Keith Cooper from Northlight Images, and in this video I'm looking at aspects of print sales, selling your work. Now, a question I often get asked, particularly since I've been reviewing this is the Epson ET-8550 EcoTank printer, is are the prints here good enough to sell? Now, yes they are if somebody will buy them. That's the simple answer to that. I get asked about print quality, which is a nebulous term that means absolutely nothing. There's no definition of print quality, and as an example of that, I've got here, this is from a website that produces prints, that sells people prints, and I'm going to look at what they've written, not as an example of what you should do to describe your prints, but an example of the kind of things that you can do to sell your prints. Now, I was struck by this, slight disbelief on reading it. There are one or two technical inaccuracies of it, but in general there's nothing you could accuse somebody of deception for. So I'll go through this and see which we can separate out from meaningful quality issues to pure marketing speak. Remember that, and I've produced a lot of other videos related to this, that it's knowing who wants to buy your prints and why they want to buy your prints is as important as the actual content of prints itself. Now, I'm talking about photo prints, I'm talking about artwork, all kinds of prints that you might be making and considering making for yourself and with the idea of selling. It's a question I get asked a lot, and as I say, there are other videos I go into it in more detail. But anyway, I just took this from somebody's website. The print works. Our fine art printer only uses the finest papers and processes to make prints. Well, we'll leave what they actually are. A professional art print, notice the use of the word professional there, it's utterly meaningless, but who knows, it might work. A professional art print is made using the very best high definition equipment. Sounds good. We don't actually have any specification of what that is, of course, and finest materials, all overseen by master printers. Am I a master printer? I do a lot of printing. I know a lot about printing. Yeah, I can call myself a master printer if I want. It's another one of those meaningless marketing terms. I'm a master printer because I can produce great prints even on a printer like this. You might not want to put it that way, but you know, what does it actually mean? Next one, size. All our prints are sized for easy printing. Well, as a customer, I'm not bothered about whether they're easy for you to print or not. Off-the-shelf frames can be bought at many stores. This saves you money on bespoke frames. So we're saying that if you want an A4 print, that's great. If you want an A3 plus print, that's great. But if you want one like this, which is a custom size, well, ask us. We will actually do it for you. Well, that's fair enough. You have to actually think about the needs of your potential clients. What are they going to do with these pictures? Presumably they're going to want to frame them. And I've found, because I tend to make, it's not on this, but I make big prints that are custom sizes. But then again, I know some printmakers. I sell to a market where people expect the picture to be the size and aspect ratio it is, not to need to fit a sheet of A4 or A3 plus. So that's another thing you need to consider about your artwork of your prints. We've got some here, the process, and this is where we wander off into the realms of pure math. A Giclée print, and any time you see the word Giclée print mentioned concerning prints, assume that it's marketing speak. It has no real meaning anymore. It says as a high quality archival. Well, we introduced that one. Is archival properties, are these important to your clients, whoever you want to sell the print? Do they care? Do they care that the print will last 50 years? Do they care if it will last 200 years? I don't know. It depends on them. But remember, it's not about what you think is important, it's about what you think about the clients. And it even goes into a definition of where the word Giclée comes from, etc., etc. In French it sounds whatever. It's also French slang, but we won't go into that. But sufficiently. So if you see the word Giclée mentioned in prints, just take that as an indicator of the marketing that you're dealing with. So we use the latest, best in class Epson Sure Colour P9000 printers. Well, P9000 is a good printer. I've reviewed the P7000 here. I don't have it as a video, it long predates my making videos, but it's an excellent printer. And the bigger version, the 44-inch version of it, the P9000, is also an excellent printer. Capable of producing print resolutions of 1440 by 2880 dpi. Yeah, great, let's introduce a few meaningless technical terms there, because they don't actually mean anything, do they? As you can see, a few minor differences with the sun coming out. That's one of the different difficulties of filming in natural light. But anyway, so we've got a few bits and pieces there about that. That print resolution, does that mean anything to your customers, or is it just there to sound impressive? I think it's there to sound impressive, because it then tells us that Giclée printers have a higher dot per square inch resolution than normal inkjet printers. Well, actually, that is wrong, because small printers like this often have a higher resolution mode than you'll find in larger format printers. So you will get higher resolution from a small desktop printer like this than you would with a large printer. So that one's actually wrong. And then in saying allowing you to do justice to high quality image files, well, yeah, that means, once again, means nothing. Less pixelated prints than you could do with a home inkjet printer. If you're getting pixelated prints with your home printer, then you're doing something wrong, either in the image preparation or your print settings or something like that. Once again, meaningless, but remember, it's marketing speak, so it's meant to be. But anyway, we move on to something colour range. Like your home inkjet printer, depends what you have. I know many people who have much bigger printers than this in their homes that they use. But anyway, professional Giclée printers use the CMYK colour process. Well, of course they do. Almost every printer uses that. This mentions that it uses other inks as well, and sort of stuff about various combinations. Once again, it doesn't really matter. What do the prints look like? I had somebody ask me, they said, I want to sell some prints from using an 8550 compared to, say, an Epson P700. Will the P700 prints look better? Well, the answer is, as ever, it depends. It's a different ink set. There are possibilities that it might. But I'm going to say that for a lot of prints you could make with this, depending on the market you're in, you could produce prints which don't really look any better. It's that nebulous concept of quality that people seem to like. You can produce great looking prints from this. If you directly compared them to a more expensive printer, you might be able to see a difference. But I'm going to say, once again, that the differences that you see in a direct comparison are simply not seen by people who want to buy your prints. They look at the image. When somebody looks at this picture here, which was printed on this, on a glossy paper, it's a picture of a boat. It's a picture of fish being unloaded at dusk from a boat that's just pulled up at a harbour. People wanting to buy a print will look at what the picture is about, what it is, whether it means something to them. Now, this was taken in Northumberland in the UK, in Amble. And if you know the place, you might want a picture of something that's a local event. That goes back to other stuff I've covered in videos that really local sells. So whilst I expect a picture of a boat at Amble might not sell in Amble, if I go somewhere else on the coast, who's going to be interested in some fish being offloaded at another port? Probably not. However, the important bit is what people are going to see is the content, the overall look of the picture. They're not going to worry about whether I used one printer or the other to produce it. As long as the picture looks okay, most people will be happy. I'm sorry to say that in some ways because of the amount of effort that I put into making great pictures, but I always realise that the amount of effort I put in is partly a personal thing, and that it's the content of the image that sells. So anyway, we have a load of stuff about various families. And then we go on to say about we use our own in-house colour profiles. Well, that's a good sign. They make their own colour profiles. Now, there's a fair chance the kit they're using is some basic home kit that you can get, something like the old Colour Monkey or Spider Print or i1 Studio, that will produce prints, usable profiles, but certainly isn't the kind of kit that I would use for it. But then I don't expect other people to have professional level profiling kit. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. The fact that they then says that our true Giclée prints, implying that there are false Giclée prints out there, such presumably things coming out of this, deliver unrivaled colour accuracy with superior black and whites, exceptional colour gamut and sublimely smooth gradient transitions. Well, yeah, sounds like a reasonable quality print to me. But true Giclée, well, yes. However, we note that here Giclée inkjet prints are produced by applying pure pigment inks directly to the paper. Well, that's a thing, a common point, that if you want to actually produce prints for sale, one of the positives of printers like Epson P700, P900 or P5000, a bigger version one I use for things, is that it's pigment based. Those pigment inks are reliable, they won't fade, they have quality associated with them. Well, that's also a marketing thing, because this uses a pigment black but then has dye inks for the other 5 inks, and the pictures here are produced with a mixture of dye and pigment. I may choose to describe them in a different way, but they're perfectly fine prints. This black and white print here, Colorado, yeah, it's printed with a mixture of pigment and dye inks. How I choose to describe that for marketing purposes, well, that's another thing. But it's the fact that it mentions pure pigment inks. What are pure pigment inks? Well, I don't know. Presumably unsullied by dyes. I don't know. Once again, it's meaningless marketing stuff. And apparently by using these, it gives you purer colours at the extreme end of the spectrum. Now, the extreme end of the spectrum to me is ultraviolet and infrared, neither of which are particularly relevant in most people's print viewing. But who needs to be troubled by the physics or optics of this, really? This is a marketing document, as I've said. It's things like it said, so if you have an image with bright punchy colours and having those colours really stand out is an important part of the effect you're trying to achieve, then you might want to choose Giclée. Well, I might want to choose inkjet. That looks great. I've tested dye-based printers as well, and pigment-based, and they all look great. That's partly because it's a good photo, and partly because I know how to optimise the printing for a particular paper, for a particular printer. Once again, utterly meaningless stuff. Here we go, something about black and white. Professional Giclées, that's opposed to mere amateur ones like this or any other printers I might have around here, use 3 different tones of black and grey ink cartridge. It says these inks can be applied to the paper in pure form, whatever that is, without any colour noise from other colour cartridges. Well, once again, displaying a technical inaccuracy there, because if you use just, and I get asked this quite often, if you use just the black and grey inks, and grey inks are just diluted black inks, they're not grey ink pigments in them, they're just diluted. If you use those, then quite often if you use pure pigment inks, then black and white prints use just the black inks often have a very warm look to them, because the pigments are often based on carbon, and carbon black has a slight warmth to the blackness to it. That's why I always say on printers like this, or even the pigment printers, use the ABW mode for printing. That's on Epson printers. Use the ABW mode, not because it doesn't use any colour inks, because it only uses the colour ink sparingly to try and get a neutral looking black and white print. Now, black and white printing is, somewhat counterintuitively, is more difficult to do than good colour printing. Our visual system is much less forgiving of prints where the colours, there's a slight colour tint. Now, depending on the lighting here and the variable lighting coming in from the window over here, this may or may not have a slight colour tint. Now, I've printed it and it's pretty neutral. That's done on here with a fine art paper, and it works fine. But once again, colour cast free black and white Giclée prints. Yeah, I'd love to be able to do that. It's very difficult. It takes a lot of work to do good black and white. The ABW mode on printers like this helps. I would say if you want the best black and white, that's one of the good reasons for going for a purely pigment ink printer. Nothing to do with quality or anything like that. It's just I get better black and white results on a wider range of papers when I'm using pigment inks. This one is interesting. That's the picture here. But I'm going to say if black and white is your thing, then you're going to move towards pigment inks. And that goes for all makes of printer. But so we got that. The next bit here, Giclée printers use a higher quality of fade-resistant archival pigment-based inks. Well, no they don't, because I already said there's no such thing as a Giclée printer. They use the same inks. So the Epson P700, the 13-inch, P900, 17-inch versions, they all use very similar ink technologies. If you're using pigments, the pigments last for probably quite a while. And if you're using dyes, they last for probably quite a while, but not as long as the pigment. Yeah, there's loads of work gone into the last few years. This, if I'd written it 15 years ago, would be a little bit closer to the truth, because the variation ink sets was much greater then. But with modern printers, you can produce whatever you like. So this 8550, I would have no difficulty in producing pictures to give to people. If I was selling prints, personally, I'd want to use them with a higher end printer, and quite a considerably high end printer. But there's nothing wrong with selling prints from printers like this. Remember, it's what people want, and it's what they want to pay for, and what market you're in. If you're looking at selling a print like this for £300, then you better have some pretty good marketing and stuff to back it up. But in the right market, if this was printed on a pigment ink printer, maybe a little bigger, then £300 would be quite reasonable. It's all about the market. It's not about technical things really, and your marketing. So anyway, we have some stuff on archival quality here. Yeah, most inks are fairly archival. One reason not to buy cheap third-party inks is you've not a clue how archival they are, how long they'll last. But start putting cheap inks into a printer like this and you can produce prints which will fade in 6 months. I would stick always to the original inks. So Epson inks in this. If this was a Canon printer, I'd say stick to Canon inks. Simple thing I've found from experience over the years. Archival quality, yeah, I don't really know what that means. Nobody really cares about it. However, if your market cares about it, look into it and make sure you've got the numbers to back it up, because the numbers to back it up are what's needed. If I tell you this print's going to last for 500 years, well, if it only lasts for 450, I'm going to be long gone, so I really don't care that much. Depends on how you want to treat your marketing and how you want to treat your potential customers. I will leave it with the last bit in this about the paper, and it goes on about a particular type of paper, a satin finish or whatever. Put in whatever you like about papers, but remember terms like archival, acid-free, optical brightener free, other ones like that. You'll come across them. There's loads of stuff like that. They mean what they mean technically, but once they get shifted into marketing materials, they can mean whatever you want them to mean. So by all means, if it's important to you that your papers are archival quality, acid-free, museum quality and other things like that, do the research to back up those claims. Are they worthwhile? Depends on your market. As I said, if I was selling this at a car boot for a tenner, then you get what you get. Don't really care about archival qualities. Somebody who's buying a print for a tenner probably isn't that bothered. Somebody who's paying £300 for a print may well be more bothered. But don't make the mistake of assuming that people who are looking for cheap wall decoration really give much of a about your print quality at all. So they have a few thoughts on printing, print marketing, and when you can get away with using a relatively cheap printer. Cheap printer that's rather nice, but I've done these. But anyway, I hope these videos are of some use. Please do feel free to comment. Please subscribe to the channel. I've got printer reviews and more printer information on its way, in particular using this one here, the 8550, which I know a lot of people are interested in. And thank you.